Okay, Osama, thank you.
Thank you, Daryl. Good morning, everyone. I'm really excited to be here because I'm very excited about the topic that I'm going to write about. And thanks, Professor Shukituk, because you just actually helped launch my idea. It's pretty much on the same subject, the connection between spirituality and development. So what I want to do in this project is to first collect the existing evidence. Sorry, my voice had a cold when I was in Saudi last week, and I'm still suffering from it. So what I want to do is to collect all of the evidence that we have up to date on the connection between thought, philosophy, consciousness, intentions, and health enhancement. There is a swelling sort of movement in the anglophonic world right now, more than in Europe, continental Europe, that is basically accepting this idea. The Lancet last November came out with this report that said basically there is 1 billion people with serious chronic diseases, and 7 million of them die every year. And basically, the conclusion of the report was that medical systems are failing to improve the situation. So this is on the bad side of the news, related to health and development. The good news is there's been breakthroughs that point to the direction that says, maybe we can address this problem with the way we think about health and the way we think about diseases. And this was the research of a neurobiologist by the name of Matthew Lieberman, who showed basically very strong connections between our lifestyles and the health of our heart. And he came up with a term called social injury, and he said basically social injury is similar to a medical injury, and it can be treated with a time limit. Social injury meaning something that you give yourself with the way you think, about life, about, say, a heartbreak. A heartbreak actually can cause you a heart attack, just as a virus, or a pathogen, or a blockage in your arteries. So this means there is a connection between the realm of spirituality, or the realm of thought, and the physical world, Our organs are physical, they're tangible. Spirituality is not tangible, it's intangible. So this is what I want to investigate. I've always suspected that there's a connection, I've always suspected that I can actually improve my health with the way I think about my health before I even go to the doctor when I get sick. And I have proven to myself, but it's just my own knowledge. And now there is just this amazing information coming out and basically saying that there might be actually a connection. So this is what I want to do. So my thesis will have two parts. The first part will compile basically all of the evidence that connects the two. And in the second part, what I want to do is I want to see if I can turn that into some practical tools, daily activities that can actually help you, especially terminally ill people. Last November, I was approached actually by a friend who was dying from cancer. He lived in Patia, and the doctor basically said, "You've got 3 months to go." He had thyroid cancer, and on the recommendation of his friends, he approached me and said, "Osama, can you help me with your ideas, crazy ideas?" I'm like, "I can, of course, but first you need to believe me, because it starts up here. It's not down here. It's up here. Can you believe this idea that with your thought you can actually cause a reversal in your condition?" And he could not accept it. I sat with him for hours on end to get him to think about it. Unfortunately, he passed away just before I went on holidays. And over the holiday, I thought about this. I said, "Oh my God, I really need to do this. I really need to take this knowledge that we have right now, that is becoming accepted, especially, like I said, in places like New Zealand, Australia, America, UK, and turn it into some kind of an exercise that you can do every day, like meditation. Yeah, meditation works. I've done it myself. Intense meditation actually can cure a headache, can help you sleep, can help you focus your thoughts. So this is what I want to do, and I will also look at not just basically the spiritual world, but I also look at the scientific world. I will see what science has to say about this. We have a field called social gerontology, which is just incredible. I mean, it's a medical field that looks at basically how the organs change as we age, yeah? And we can see exactly what happens in each organ with MRIs and EKGs and all of these things. So all of that is there, and I will use that. And then I will compare that with knowledge that comes from things like remote sensing, ESP, meditation, and group meditations, visions, dreams, all of these things that we call spiritual, and put them side by side and see how I can translate or combine both and translate that into some physical activity. So this is what I would like to do in this project. Methodology-wise, I'm going to use two approaches, quantitative and qualitative, like Andrew. My qualitative research will be mostly done through what is called the rapid appraisal. Rapid appraisal methods come in two types.
Show up your screen, please. And tell the people on Skype what page you're on.
Okay, rapid appraisal at the very end, it's page 17, I believe. So rapid appraisal is sort of like a very inexpensive way to do research. Yeah, you want to understand what is a relationship between, say, a variable, again, a demographic variable and reality. Yeah, you can basically bring people together based on certain social demographics and like age, years of education, location, and ask them a set of semi-structured questions to basically get feedback on your topic, and you can also then contrast that information with key informants like doctors, nurses, clergy, people in the know, people who know people, and compare the two. And then compare that with your own observations, and that's called triangulation. So rapid appraisal is really a triangulation method to see if what you think you're observing is actually valid and reliable scientifically. So that's the quantitative method. The qualitative method, or the quantitative method, will involve what is called the last step survey. And the last step survey, basically, this is, I will use this just to assuage or allay the skeptics, like economists who only believe in hardcore numbers. And I will use social science population software. So I will do a questionnaire, and then I will do a regression using the software to see which of these questions actually touch exactly on my hypothesis, which is there is a connection between the spiritual world and the health world, as we understand health. And I've already tabulated a few questions based on my entries. I started actually doing the research. I found 9 questions that kind of touch on what I'm thinking. I looked at the website of the CDC in the States, and they've honed these questions. I mean, they've been doing it for like 100 years, using all sorts of quantitative methods, including regressions and rapid appraisals. So they have a list of questions related to health. So I looked at them and incorporated some of that in my research. I also looked at the FDA website and incorporated that as well. So there's a lot of sources out there that I'm going to use to verify my work step by step. Everything I'm going to write is actually based on research. So none of it is going to be my own. I'm going to see what other people are saying about this. Yeah, experts, laymen, university research. I work at the Yale right now, so I have access to a lot of papers. As you can imagine, we organize a lot of conferences, and oh my God, I could spend 40 hours a day reading, and it's still not enough. So all of that will help me in honing. So I'm really excited about this because I really want to prove this. And here's one more reason. Yesterday, I went with my colleagues to the old palace in Sanam Luang to basically pay tribute to the late king. And we were seated in this area, and I saw a colleague of mine sitting 3 rows in front of me, and I immediately wished to be next to her. But there's, a whole bunch of people in front of me. So I just sat there wishing that this would happen. An hour later, we were ushered to stand up and start walking to where the coffin was. And I still wanted to say hello. We were then asked to file up in 2 rows. She wound up on the left, I wound up on the right. She was about 5 people ahead of me, so there was no way I could say hello. Suddenly, out of the blues, the woman in front of me stopped walking. Now, the 2 files are progressing, they're going up the stairs, going to the main hall where the coffin is. Suddenly, this woman stopped, and then there was a gap between her and the woman in front of her, and the gap kept bigger and bigger, to the point that one of the officers came and asked the woman maybe if she needed to rest. And he asked me to go forward. And as I did, in compliance, I found myself next to my colleague. And she looked at me like, how did that happen? And I'm like, oh my God, I just wished that an hour ago I thought of it and it happened. Against all odds. I mean, if you did a scientific study to see if Osama is going to be standing or seated next to his colleague, you would say there's no way because of the many barriers. So again, there is something there, yeah? There's something there. It's intangible, but I could say that maybe we can wish better health for ourselves with our mind, and this is what I want to go and find out this way. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Osama. Trinidad has some questions. Immediately, she's going to see writing.
Yeah. I saw in your thesis, you talk about some kind of detergent, like Winnie the Pooh and the Little Prince and Alice in Wonderland.
Yes.
How would you that relate that to your thesis? I guess.
Yeah. These parables, some of which are made up or fictitious, they teach us lessons from life that we can actually put into practice without being so invasive and intrusive. Presumably they were written for children. And what I'm learning now that I've entered my 5th decade, is that a lot of the things I was taught as a child, and people who write about them as adults, they become immediately instant bestsellers. Like this book by William Bennett. I'm like, how is it something that, we were taught in primary school, adults are buying. So obviously there is something of value there. And when I went and started reading these stories again, which I read when I was like 6, 7, maybe until 10, I'm like, oh my God, I almost forgot these lessons. And the reason I like them is now because I see everything connected. I have a holistic understanding of the world. This is no longer mechanistic. As I'm an engineer by training, that was my first mechanical engineer. And in mechanics, we study the world, including ourselves, us humans, as basically robots. We are determined to work, die. You can turn off the machine, turn it on. You can throw it away. Insignificant. Nothing happens. No ripple effects in the world. Very mechanistic view of the world. I no longer see the world right now as such. I see us all entangled. I see a connection between matter and and the person, the mind and the body, you and me, I see us connected. I don't see us as separate, although we appear as separate. But I feel that we can read each other's minds. I feel that we do have an effect on the tangible world. I think our wishes can actually come true, depending on how we think about them. So these stories embody all of these things. In Beauty and the Beast, a girl was basically forced to marry a beast. And then over time, she realized that he was beautiful. and that her thoughts actually helped transform the beast to something, more princely and lovely. So these stories are about transformations, and this is why the title of my thesis is Transformations, which I will explain in detail, both spiritually and scientifically.
Thank you. Very interesting.
Yeah,
Thank you, Robin.
indeed, very interesting. That's right. This, it appears to me that the whole thesis is something to do with like positive thinking or suggestive thinking. You suggest to yourself that it's going to be okay. And therefore, the thesis is eventually it will be okay. You must like something in order the thing to like you. Like for example, people who appreciate money. Like for example, I was told that the Chinese, they really want money in that sense. So they take care of their currencies. If you look at my wallet, it is in a disarray. Right? The way I arrange Malaysian ringgit, US dollars, Singapore dollars, all in a disarray. But some people, they really love money, and they will, in Malay language, we say urut. Right? They will keep the money. Alright? So something like that. You must. This is kind of thinking that they say that you like something and you appreciate it, the thing comes to you. If you look at some of the management gurus, they talk about this idea of positive or suggestive. When you suggest to yourself it's going to be good, and eventually, I think you can replicate that to health as well. I think being an Asian, the idea of being, the Indic civilization, and also talks about this. Health is not only your external, or rather your physical body, but also your spiritual. So I think that is interesting. I'll be happy to read your outcome of your thesis. The question I want to ask you is, now, early on in your presentation, you said that you want to see how there is an improvement of health with regard to thinking about it, alright? Now, and your methodology that you wanted to use, part of it was actually a quantitative methodology that you wanted to speak to people, alright?
Yes.
Alright, now, who do you want to speak to? My business.
Okay. Yeah. I will speak to a lot of people. I am a member in 5 communities, sports communities, elderly communities, temple communities here in Bangkok. They have also some members, different age groups. I will speak to them, and I want to know, I will first tell them about my research idea, and those who volunteer, then I will divide them into 2 groups. Groups who basically see the world in a positive outlook, and those who see it otherwise. And then look at their medical histories and see which ones fare better over time. So that will give me an indication. That is not concrete evidence, but that will just give me some indication as to the next step. So that's one thing. The other thing, I will ask friends all over the world, on Facebook actually. I have about 800 friends on Facebook, and ask them to do the same. I will basically put a question there. Has anyone been able to influence their condition by thinking about it? And I got this idea actually from a sociologist, a German sociologist, a fellow of Anthony Giddens, who was British. Anthony Giddens in 1997 put out this idea. He said, modern societies are so preoccupied with the future, and that tends to generate risk. And he wrote a book called Risk Society. And it was just a huge hit. I mean, I read the book, it was amazing. Huge, big book. And this German guy, his colleague, said, true, however, it's the knowledge of the risk that creates the risk. Knowledge, meaning thought. Like, he was sort of a Buddhist. His name is Ulrich Beck. Beck studied Asian philosophies and said it's the knowledge of the risk that generates the risk. So both of them said this 20 years ago, and look at us today. True. Risk has become a major feature of society today. We breathe cancer every day. We drink it in our coffee, in our water. We sleep on it in our beds. You cannot escape it. There's so much human activity. There is so much wealth. But there's a lot of pollution out there, there's a lot of anger, there's a lot of frustration, anxiety, everything that Nietzsche described in his amazing book, The Genealogy of Morals, has come true. If you read his description, how man basically is prone to strife, and that leads to disgruntled feelings, and that leads to insatisfaction, everything has been written has come true. So is it a prediction, or is it actually the knowledge? Because someone said it that made it come true. So I'm going to investigate that here a little bit. Chances are it's both. Yeah, we do things, people act, and then and other people react. So cause and effect is causing these problems, but also the knowledge, the internalization of that knowledge is probably also at work, and that's where I will go to Professor Schulte for help. To help me, so I will probably also interview her if she wants to volunteer, and maybe she has two lovely children, her son especially. I would love to have a chat with him about how we can look at his health holistically, not just mechanistically. And also the scientists. I'm in touch with a few scientists who are into it, who have become philosophers as a result of their own findings. Yeah? And scientists who were trained like me in the classical mechanistic way, and then who, when they reached 50, they switched over and they became philosophers because they see that, oh my God, the world is not as mechanistic as
we used to have a bad wife.
Or that.
That's the saying, right? You have a bad wife, you become a philosopher.
And then husbands, I will ask both. Definitely, there's definitely.
Not a bad husband, that's it.
Yeah, there's a gender dimension. Yeah, there is definitely a gender dimension, and I consider myself a feminist, so I will definitely interview a lot of women, especially married women, women with children, because there are physiological changes that pregnancy does to our body, and I would like to understand that, and how that also interplay with our health. The bottom line is, I want to help ourselves get better, and I want to help the health system do better. I don't want to destroy it. Somebody asked me that. He said Nietzsche tried to destroy religion, Christianity, and he failed. Are you going to do the same? No, I don't want to destroy anything. I'm just trying to complement, build on it.
Okay. Again, the reason I was asking that is actually, I was just looking at the objective of the study. If you are trying to make the connection between health and the thought about good health, then we will need to look at how you are going to prove that hypothesis. Right? So again, that if you are having elite interviews, who are you going to interview? Are you going to interview people who are sick, and after duration post and pre-test, something like that? After going through a counseling for a period of 6 months, there is a stark improvement in their medical conditions. And that is one way to prove it. All right, to some level of credibility to your data. All right, if you can get about 10 or 15 people who are not necessarily on a dying stage or terminally ill, but also at the different stages of health issues, and by going through a particular process with you as a counselor, like for example 3 months or 6 months, then there is a significant, you can come up with a measurement to measure. So that will be an indication more substantive indication. Or you can, or people are already who have illnesses who are already practicing this positive and suggestive thinking, then you can also interview them. There's one. Okay. I think basically it's an interesting thing, but what we will be looking at is actually for you to show proof, and that quantitative method would be a good method since you are trained in science and technology. I think it will do well. Thank you.
Thank you, Robbie. Please.
I'm just thinking a lot in contemporary situation. You are saying that positive thought will lead to positive action. But what if the inability to think about positive thought is because of the negative condition that lead to negative thought? How to correct the negative condition? There must be a dialectic, otherwise
Yes.
there is no correction. How to accept negative condition when you need to correct the negative condition first before you have a positive. Of course, your ideal is always positive, but you're confronted with a negative situation, so you have to, before you think, you idealize positively, but you have to engage with the negative condition first. So how do you reconcile this in your deliberation? It looks nice, but reality we have to be dialectic. So negative thought is a necessary part of positive thinking as well.
Excellent question. Actually, I thought about this, and I've been talking to a lot of the people who deal with patients who have basically depression, and who have approached them to help them, and they treat them with meridians and chakras and all sorts of fields, energy fields, treatments, and I've read a lot of their books, and I've learned from that group of people that about 20% of the world population is actually positive and the rest is negative. So there's 80% of the population, there are 7.1 billion people on Earth, 80% of them think negatively of the world. And they think because of that negativity out there, because of that coherent sort of mental predisposition, all of these negative things happen, including wars, including things like diseases and pollution. And these 20% of the people that they think are out there, they're actually the ones who are saving the world every day, making it basically stable for the rest of us. So they have developed a lot of methods, and I'm going to study their methods. I'm going to see how they actually can achieve what you just said. And I also have my own ideas. I've tabulated 9 questions here based on my interviews. I've been interviewing people, doctors including, and I will do my regression test to see which question really is the most pertinent, and then I will take that question and just flip it and turn it around and see how I can turn it into something positive. Because all of the questions I'm asking is, I'm trying to see if the person is positive or negative. And once I found that one question that is really, really pertinent, then I'm going to turn it into a positive statement and basically ask people to meditate on that. This is one activity. Another activity, you can ask people to write about that every night or every morning. I was trained in morning papers when I was in college. You wake up in the morning and you write whatever comes to your mind. You write with your heart, you edit with your mind. Most of us do it the other way around. We immediately want to sit down and write a structured paper. Our brain is not structured. Our brain works like a mind map. And that's how I write. So this is one way to turn things around. So there are many techniques, yeah? Many things will probably pop up. Right now, I just have a vague idea about it, but hopefully once I find that one critical question that really hits the nerve, then I'll see how I can turn it from a negative to a positive. Just reverse its polarity, basically.
Thank you very much, Yamin. Yeah.
I'm Yamin, and I'm from Myanmar, and mostly I'm a Buddhist. So your topic is related to the health, and sometimes you mentioned it about the meditations. So in your pre-survey, talking with people, is there any difference based on the religious issues or not? Because for the Buddhists in my countries, most of the children, we have learned the meditations, and we are very close to the importance and the effect of the meditations, what we can get, like a peaceful mind and something like that. So sometimes, according to my experience, sometimes it's really to clear my mind, to refine and to recall that kinds of religious teachings and like the religious thought when we face some very difficult barriers about of negative conditions. So those issues may include in your thesis or not based on the religious environments.
Thank you. Yes, it will include that. There are two sources of information right now that are accepted in the world. There's the scientific research, which is very mechanistic, tangible, measurable. And there's the quantum world, or the spiritual world. The quantum and spiritual are actually similar. The only difference is one is ancient. Buddhism is a very ancient religion. The meridians, for example. These things have been discovered thousands of years ago, and quantum physics now have just come to affirm them. So quantum physics will play a big part of my research, because it basically affirms what you just said, affirms the spirituality, that it does exist, it does work, it does help people. So two sources of information, mechanistic, one is quantum or spiritual, and I will describe both succinctly in terms of health. And I will focus on three things. I'll focus on heart attacks, brain strokes, and chronic diseases, because those are the big ones that are killing a lot of people today. Yeah, the biggest killer of actually men and women today is strokes and heart attacks. And it used to be something that affected people over the age of 50. Yeah, and people who are in bad health. Now it's come down to like late 20s. It's really serious. You have no idea. Look at the Lancet. You will see the numbers. They're shocking. So something is not working. We're becoming richer. We have these wonderful cities. Life is great. So why are people dying from heart attacks and brain strokes? And even those who survive, they become disabled, and they become a burden on the female member of the family. And this is actually setting back the gender issues that the UN has worked on for so many years and pushed to progress. Now it's in regression, because a lot of the disabled members of the family become basically the responsibility of the women. And that's also having this negative social impact on gender equality and women's rights. So it's a very complex problem, but I will try to simplify it. And so yes, to answer your question, yes, I will describe in as much detail as possible all of these things: mindfulness, better sleep, diet, activity, from both the mechanistic side and from the spiritual side.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Osama.
Okay.